Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today, we're once again having a look at the suggestions passed to developers for July of 2024. In this video, we're going to have a look at the naval forces and also the helicopters. There's some pretty cool naval forces this time, so I'm looking forward to it. The other thing is, there is a subtech tree for aviation, the Indonesian Air Force's subtree. I'm going to try and cover it on the weekend. There's a lot of vehicles in it, so should take quite a while. As always though, if you enjoy this content, make sure to subscribe to the channel, as there'll be more of it coming. Let's get into the ships. The first vehicle we're having a look at is for the Germans. It is a Deutschland-class battleship, the KMS Schleswig-Holstein. This was the fifth ship of the Deutschland class of pre-dreadnought battleships and was laid down in the 18th of August 1905 and then launched on the 17th of December in 06 and then commissioned in the Kaiserlich Marine on the 6th of July 1908. After being decommissioned on the 2nd of May 1917, she would then be recommissioned into the Reichsmarine on the 31st of January 1926. The ship has the distinction of firing some of the opening shots of the Second World War. The Deutschland class of pre-dreadnought battleships was based on and also closely resembled the preceding Braunschweig class, with the ships having rearranged secondary battery and also, after the Deutschland herself, improved armour due to weight savings. Rendered obsolete though, before they hit the water by the design and construction of the HMS Dreadnought, the ships would nonetheless see much service in the High Seas Fleet. After the war with the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was permitted to retain some old battleships for coastal defence, and these included the Deutschlands. Following the Treaty of Versailles, Deutschland would eventually be scrapped, but the remaining three ships of her class, Hanover, Schleswig, and Schleswig-Holstein, would be modernised throughout the 1920s. Two of the three funnels were merged, and some of the boilers were converted to fuel oil. They would remain in service through the transition to the Kriegsmarine, and even further still through World War II, being continually fitted with new weapons, in particular anti-aircraft weapons, throughout her service. Upon being reactivated for the first time in February of 1944, Schleswig-Holstein would serve first as a training vessel and then go under refit for a conversion to a convoy escort. She was then hit by RAF bombs in December and foundered in shallow water. Her crew was sent to assist in the defense of Marienburg, and following the Soviet capture of that city, further scuttling charges were detonated aboard the Schleswig-Holstein, and post-war she was towed into the Gulf of Finland for use as a shallow water target ship. Last used for target practice in 1966, the remains are now submerged. This vehicle in 1945 had 4 280mm guns in two twin mounts. It then had 14 150mm guns, 6 105mm, 10 40mm, and then 4 single 37mm, and a bunch of 20mm in the form of 26 of them in separate mounts. So this thing was a pre-World War I battleship that was outfitted with AA in the Second World War. Pretty cool. We also have the HMS King George V, but specifically the 1945 refit. The King George V class were Britain's second class of treaty battleships, and the first new design drawn up for the Royal Navy since the treaty had been signed. Though they were technically succeeding the Nelson-class battleships, the two classes were intended to serve together, with the KGV class replacing the Revenge-class battleships, and after the escalator clause had been invoked, the Lion class was intended to enter service with a similar layout but improved main battery. A notable feature of these ships were the two quadruple turrets. Though first envisaged with 3 triple 15-inch turrets in a more traditional layout, the class instead featured a 10-gun 14-inch main battery in a 4-2-4 configuration, with the twin turrets superfiring over the 4 quadruple turret. With a 35,000-ton limit, the Admiralty felt that 16-inch guns, such as on the Nelson class, could not provide a balanced ship with a satisfactory mix of speed, armour, and also firepower. 15-inch guns in triple turrets were then settled upon and drawn up. However, because Britain had been pushing for a new naval treaty which had a new 14-inch limit to the main battery, as a result, they would be downgraded yet another inch to 14-inch weapons. And as naval guns are long-lease items, they were ordered and began construction before the escalator clauses were invoked in 1938. Although originally it would have been 3 quadruple turrets in the same configuration, now the superfiring turret lost 2 guns to save weight. The King George V class would from this point emphasize armor to offset the power found on newer ships and ships with 16-inch guns. This was more than satisfied, as they would be the most heavily armored ships per ton ever constructed, with the Yamato having a thicker belt but near twice the displacement. This was furthered as Britain had developed significantly improved armor metrology, techniques found only otherwise in Germany. This yielded an 8 to 25% increase in armor effectiveness in reference to those outside of the UK. The ships also featured significant bursting charges for its 14-inch shells, and the KGV's broadside weight was very comparable to that of the Bismarck. 5 ships would be constructed, with the first being commissioned in 1940 as the class leader, the HMS King George V, with the Prince of Wales shortly following her in 1941, and the other 3, the Duke of York, the Anson, and also the HAL, joining the fleet within 13 months of the Prince Wales. They would see action throughout the war, and the King George V and also Prince of Wales would both see action in their most famous actions in the hunt for the Bismarck. Only one would be lost, the Prince of Wales, due to Japanese air actions, which largely would have been prevented if the ships had revised their AA strategy. Since this vehicle is the 1945 version, it has a main battery of 10 14-inch cannons, then it has 8 5.25-inch ones as its secondary, basically the same guns that you find on the Dido. Then it had 8 octo-barreled 2-pounder pom-poms, so the octuplets that you find, I believe, on the London. Also 24 single 20mm, 6 twin 20mm, 2 quadruple 40mm, and 2 single 40mm too. So they realized that they really needed to up the game when it came to the air defense. The next one we have is about the Ibuki class heavy cruiser. Now these were never actually properly built, and the information about them is all over the place. So I'm going to try and sift through the weeds for you, but put it like this. This vehicle was supposed to be an improvement of the Megami heavy cruiser refit design, the one that we have in the game, and it used mostly elements from that, meaning that it would have pretty much the same armament, maybe slight improvements when it came to the guns, but because it was never actually fitted, none of this was actually real. It was also supposed to have very similar armor, and also basically just be slightly better in every way, but once again, because it wasn't fully built, it's kind of hard to find proper information about it. It seems like even when it comes to all of the sources, there's a lot of disagreement about what it was supposed to do. So its actual construction, the lead ship of the class Ibuki, was laid down in April of 1942 at the Kure Naval Arsenal. She would officially receive the name Ibuki in early April 1943, as she had the hull number 300 up until that point. She would then be launched in late May in 1943, but the losses of Midway occurring to Japan sought to rebuild it as a carrier instead of a heavy cruiser. So because they'd lost so much in the Battle of Midway, Japan tried to focus on building carriers instead of the heavy cruisers. So this meant that the Ibuki went from being designed as a heavy cruiser into a carrier, which reduced her speed by removing 2 propeller shafts with fuel in their place instead. And this conversion began in December of 1943, but unlike the Shinano, she would never actually be completed. So basically, it was a heavy cruiser that did not get finished as a heavy cruiser. They adapted it to change it into a carrier, and then just never finished it. It was supposed to carry 15 A-7M Reppu fighters and also 12 B-7A Ryusei bombers. The Ibuki would then eventually be scrapped in late September 1946 after the war, and then work on the scrapping would be completed on the 1st of August 1947. As for her sister ship, she was never completed or launched, and would never receive an official name, meaning that it was kind of the end of the setup. If you want to actually see what this vehicle was supposed to have, it was supposed to have 10 203mm guns, 8 127mm, 8 25mm, 4 13s, and 16 torpedo tubes as well, with basically 4 sets of 4. But, as I said, it was never really built or finished in any way, so didn't really get anywhere. We have a frigate for Italy, the Alpino. The Alpino class frigates were designed in the mid-1960s, specifically the Alpino and the Carabinieri. They constitute the second generation of Italian helicopter carrier frigates and were rightly considered at the time of their realization among the best units in the world in their category, and represented a qualitative leap from both an operational and also technological point of view, being equipped with anti-roll stabilizing fins to allow the use of helicopters and weapons even in adverse weather conditions, and they were the first high-altitude unit of the Italian Navy to install the Kodag-type propulsion with 2 Tosi Metrovic G6 gas turbines for 15,000 horsepower and 4 Tosi QTV 320 diesel engines for a power of 16,800, capable of guaranteeing a speed of 29 knots, thus abandoning the propulsion to boilers that had characterized all units beforehand. The gas turbines were engaged on the speed reducer, and the power developed was added to that already supplied by the diesel engines to allow full force navigation. The 2 units, armed with 6 76mm cannons of the Otto Melara, and equipped with 2 AB-204 helicopters in the AS version, and then the anti-submarine armament was 2 triple MG-32 torpedo launchers, which had 324mm torpedoes, and a 305 Menon mortar launcher. The electronic systems were composed of an AN-SPS-12 aerial surveillance radar, an MM-SPS-702 surface search radar, an MM-SPN-748 navigation radar, which was for shooting in a direction, 2 Argo systems with the Orion Radar RTN-10X, an integrated DE-1164 sonar system, an integrated ECM ESM MM-SLQ-747 system 2. The importance of these frigates was given by the presence of 2 helicopters on board, as well as a theoretically high anti-aircraft firepower. Their operational task was that of discovering, locating, and also destroying submarines, protecting convoys and naval forces from the underwater threat, close escorting anti-submarine, anti-aircraft, and also anti-ship work. We also have an Indian helicopter which is pretty cool, the HAL Prachand. Since its independence from the UK in 1947, India has been involved in multiple wars with Pakistan and also China. In 1948, 62, 65, 71, and also 1999. In none of the wars before the 1999 Kargil War, the attack helicopters played any major role with the Indian armed forces. Only with the introduction of the Mi-24 and 35 in Indian Air Forces in the 1980s did India get a significant number of attack helicopters in its inventory, which were ultimately used by Indian peacekeeping forces in Sri Lanka from 1987 to 1990 to end the Sri Lankan Civil War. During the Kargil War in 1999, Indian armed forces were unable to use the attack helicopters in its inventory to any significant effect due to technical limitations faced by the Mi-24 and 35 helicopters, which could not fly to the heights of Kargil occupied by Pakistani forces. Other than the Mi-24 and 35, the Mi-8s were also used to attack the heights of Kargil, but were not as maneuverable due to which one of the Mi-8s fell prey to a Stinger missile, resulting in its loss, with 4 personnel on board. After this loss, all helicopters were restricted from going to the front lines and supported in casualty evacuation from a safe distance. Due to the experience of Kargil, the Indian Armed Forces felt an immediate need of an attack helicopter that would be capable of assaulting enemy positions in the highest battlefields that are in the Himalayas bordering both Pakistan and also China. Post-Kargil War, Indian Armed Forces started looking for a foreign dedicated helicopter capable of fighting in the high mountains but was unsuccessful, and hence the program was cancelled, which gave birth to the Light Combat Helicopter program from Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. The first confirmation of this program came from HAL in 2006, when it was said that the development of the attack helicopter had been started. The first flight for the helicopter was achieved on the 29th of March 2010, after which there were 4 technology demonstrators which were built by HAL. The testing for LCH was protracted and went through rigorous testing procedure, which covered the hot summers of the desert as well as the chilly winter nights of the Himalayas. As the testing for this helicopter was completed in January 2019, when it was declared by HAL that it was completed and available for introduction. Subsequently, it was ready for production in February 2020, which the helicopters then started the production as a limited series set. During the India-China border standoff, HAL Prachand was deployed in eastern Ladakh for performing armed patrol sorties with its technology demonstrator aircrafts, which showed the confidence of the forces and the quality of the aircraft themselves. The HAL Prachand has been designed as a multi-role attack helicopter for Indian armed forces that could be operated in multiple battlefield environments with very high flight profile and also multiple attack profiles. The complete design and development of this helicopter has been done by Rotary Wing Research and Design Center of HAL. The helicopter is equipped with a tandem seating configuration for the pilot and co-pilot and gunner. Like most of the attack helicopters, it also has a narrow fuselage with stealth profiling, armor protection, and also day and night combat capability. It also has an infrared suppressor installed on its engine exhaust to reduce its thermal profile. From its inception, the LCH program was decided to be based on the ALH program of HAL from the 1990s, out of which HAL Dhruv was born. Like the Dhruv, the LCH is a twin-engine helicopter that shares the same engine, which is the Shakti 1H1. The engine has been co-developed through a joint development between HAL and Safran, and is based on the Safran Ardiden turboshaft engines that generate 1,000 to 1,500 kilowatts of energy. The armament that this thing holds is one 20mm M621 cannon on the Nexter THL-20 turret. It can carry 4 by 12 FC-275 LGR rockets. Also, it can carry 4 dual Mistral air-to-air missiles, or the Dhruvastra air-to-ground missiles, which is planned, and then also it can carry bombs, the HSLD-250s, which is quite fun. So, that is the suggestions passed to the devs for naval and helicopters. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.